this whole case essentially confirms the Ashley Biden diary, that it was her diary. One of the groups out there that, we're almost natural friends. And of course we are friends organizationally. And I've always admired James O'Keefe, who runs Project Veritas. He's a great journalist. He and his colleagues do great muckraking to expose corruption in government and the private sector and lies, usually by using videos, investigative video techniques that get their targets to confess to misconduct or expose misconduct that they otherwise would not highlight. And most recently this week, they were able to communicate or record a Pfizer executive, a doctor, who was a senior guy there at Pfizer, at least according to reports, who said that Pfizer essentially was wanting to, but depending on how you interpret his comments, already was directing the evolution of the COVID virus in order to develop vaccines. So that translates to me as gain of function work on COVID in order to get vaccines, which obviously they would market. Dangerous, right? Could be in violation of law depending on what's going on. So you know why James O'Keefe is the target of the deep state and their defenders in the big media. He exposed Pfizer a few years ago on vaccine issues and concerns they had, similar type of investigative work. And Judicial Watch exposed how Pfizer and the FBI evidently were working together to try to get him for that. And then his home was raided by the FBI and the home of other Project Veritas journalists, an unprecedented series of raids, as they were supposedly investigating the handling of Ashley Biden, who is what, Biden's daughter or granddaughter? Daughter, right?
I think daughter, yeah.
Diary that had some discomforting details about her relationship with Joe Biden and his conduct. Now, the New York Times essentially knew about the raid as it was happening, if not before it happened. So the question was the FBI or the Justice Department working with the New York Times in that regard? The raid was so outrageous, you can read about it, but they took him out, handcuffed him outside of his apartment in his underwear while they ransacked his home, right? Journalist. And Judicial Watch filed a lawsuit after we got the proverbial hand to the face by the Justice Department about what we think was a leak by the DOJ or FBI about the raid, which would be a violation of law. And we found documents. They just gave us 11 pages of heavily redacted documents. I should have printed them out so I could have showed you the redactions. But maybe we'll just flash them while I'm talking on screen. And the records are redacted in large part, and others are, 3 pages at least, are withheld in their entirety because they say the agency claims they're not part of the responsive record, which makes no sense legally, and they're going to probably have to give those records anyway. But this is the sort of thing we have to face with the Justice Department and FBI all the time. They try to sneak by illegal redactions and withholdings by us all the time. We just have to be fighting. And because Judicial Watch is America's #1 expert on FOIA, we know how to fight. Our attorneys are just great in that regard. We had sued for all records of government and non-governmental communications between officials in the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, the agency or the sub-agency Justice Department responsible for this, and the New York Times regarding Project Veritas, James O'Keefe, Ashley Biden, and others. The records reveal that the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District was in contact with New York Times reporters, including William K. Rashbaum, referred to in the email chains as Willie, so they were on a first-name basis with him, and banned protests before, during, and after the raids on the homes of O'Keefe and other Project Veritas reporters, or at least they were reporters at the time. So the records include a November 4th, 2021 email. I think the raid was on the 4th. 6th. It was on the 6th, it was 2 days later, about a search in Mamaroneck. So was this did they have precog information about this search? The chains labeled Search in Mamaroneck, which is where James lived, Ray redacted diary, which is obviously Biden's diary. This is what the text says. Willie Rashbaum from the Times just called and says they know or believe that a search warrant is being conducted in Mamaroneck this morning at a location that is either the residence of Eric Cochrane, who I think was a Veritas person, who may or may not be a whistleblower or a Project Veritas office. He believes that this is in connection with a Florida investigation into whether Project Veritas stole or purchased a stolen diary belonging to Ashley Biden. It's redacted, but it's obviously Biden. And they later include in this email chain redacted details about 2 searches regarding the homes of O'Keefe and then Project Veritas journalist Spencer Meads. Times Now believes, one of the writers of the Southern District, was a public affairs official in the Southern District of New York, Times Now believes it's not quite a Florida investigation, but an SDNY, Southern District of New York investigation, and it involves more than just the diary. No elaboration on that. And so then they get another email saying, O'Keefe arrest? The Times hears O'Keefe was arrested this morning. In fact, he wasn't, but he was in custody for a period of time during the search. And of course, they redacted the rest of the email improperly. You'll see here. We'll throw it up on the screen. It's pretty clear, looking at these emails, that the New York Times was tipped off about the raid. It's not clear who tipped them off. And I think it's curious, these emails, at least the parts that have been released, don't express any interest, seemingly, about how the New York Times figured out this raid was taking place, or raids in the case of the Project Veritas. So this is a really interesting set of documents. You can go to Judicial Watch's website. Maybe we'll have a link below. You can look at them directly. And as I said in our statement in relation to this, that, and I'm not going to read every single email we got, but you can look at them yourself. The New York Times was obviously, as I said, tipped off about the unprecedented raid on the home of James O'Keefe and other Project Veritas journalists. And these new Justice Department records may raise more questions than answers about how that happened. And you have to remember what this investigation was about. It was about the mishandling of Ashley Biden's diary. Why is this an FBI issue? Why is it a state authority issue? You know, the allegation was that she left it behind, but they made the case that, well, she didn't leave it behind and it was, quote, stolen property and should have been messed with. You know, I don't know which way you come down on that. Does it warrant FBI involvement in raids on the homes of journalists who, by all accounts, didn't even have the diary in the end and had insisted it be turned over to law enforcement, as Judicial Watch uncovered in other documents obtained about this issue down in Florida? What was going on in the FBI and Justice Department that had them so anxious about investigating this? Of course, they were directed, or the complaint came from Ashley Biden's lawyer. And I guess if you're in the Biden Justice Department, a personal lawyer, the Biden family can get all sorts of criminal investigations going, even though the public interest would suggest that it's best handled at the states, assuming there's anything criminal going on at all. And in this case, they did the unprecedented raid on the home of a journalist, at least unprecedented in modern memory. So Judicial Watch is going to keep on snooping around here, using the FOIA here. This case is not over. As I said, some of these documents we believe have been withheld improperly, at least parts of them, in whole or in part. So more is coming. And again, the interesting thing is, this whole case essentially confirms the Ashley Biden diary, that it was her diary. And the content, you can go look up, is very interesting in that regard. Now, I think 2 people who were had taken the diary or involved in trying to sell it were forced by the Justice Department to plead out. But, you know, I don't give too much credence to some poor saps in Florida being targeted by the Justice Department pleading out when they have all the federal government coming down on them like a ton of bricks. It's quite the scandal. And once again, when it comes to defending the media is rarely there. And it's Judicial Watch who's defending the First Amendment rights of the media by investigating the abuses of the media, in this case, the abuses of James O'Keefe, who frankly deserves a Pulitzer Prize. I would be happy if Judicial Watch shared a Pulitzer Prize with Project Veritas. I think that would be a good twofer. Don't you agree? And I think Donald Trump just sued the Pulitzer board for giving a prize to the fake news organizations that pushed the Russian smears against him that were knowingly false. Good for him on that. I don't know whether the case is going to go anywhere, but he's in the right target area in highlighting the corruption of the Pulitzer board.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and like our video down below.